Hello and welcome to another of the videos in our iFormulate Revisited series. My name is David Calvert, and in 2013 together with Jim Bullock we founded iFormulate, and in these times we thought it would be a good chance to look back at some of the conference presentations we've made and reflect on some of our thoughts then. So today I'm going to look back at a presentation I made for the Society of Cosmetic Sciences on their annual event which takes place in the UK called SCS Formulate, and this presentation was made in 2017, so just over 3 years ago. And I have in the other series of iFormulate Revisited looked back at how we actually presented it in terms of format of slides, and some of them I have to say have been quite scary, but this one was actually not too bad. So yeah, it says what it is on the tin, and it's fairly clean, which is an approach we've taken. And the title, as you can see here, is Cosmetic Formulators, You Are Not Alone. So back to the normal one, and in this presentation what I was trying to do, and it's a theme which comes up in many presentations we've made and in many discussions we have with clients, is that people do believe that their problem is their problem and nobody else will understand that except those who are active in their industry. And we try to bring through that actually some of the common problems formulators face are not specific to the industry. They may be specific to formulators, but not to the industry. So hence the title, Cosmetic Formulators, You Are Not Alone. So what were we trying to do, and what was the outline for this presentation? And we did the usual introductions, and we'll skip through those quite quickly. We talk about what formulation is, and the aim of this one was to talk actually about the design process. And although this is revisited and talking about reflecting on some of our thoughts, the actual design process doesn't change, and a little bit of thought goes a long way in formulation design. And we took this opportunity and still talk with our clients about what the stages are in a design for formulation approach, talk a little bit about the language, talk about what is a risk assessment, and maybe that term is a little bit more common to people these days. We then, as would be expected, talk through a cosmetics example, which at the time was beginning to become topical and now is probably even more topical, and then we talk about a summary. So what did we talk about? Let's start. So introductions. Yeah, and you'll have seen these on many of our presentations if you've seen us at conferences or if you've even listened to some of the previous webinars. Yes, there we go. We were formed in 2012 actually. Apologies, I got my date wrong, time flies. Jim and myself. You can read about our experience. Please go to our webpage. If there are things that we don't know, we have as well as many grey hairs what are left on our heads. We know a lot of people. So when we don't know something, we normally know the person we should talk to try and understand what's going on. And yeah, services, majority of our work is in consultancy, and a lot of that is done under non-disclosure agreements, so we can't really talk a lot about our consultancy assignments. We have done some strategic work which is in the public domain, so we did some work early on to help set up the National Formulation Centre in the UK. We've worked on skills for the Science Industry Partnership. We've worked with the Royal Society of Chemistry on the use of open data in formulation, and many other ones in terms of strategic role. And our skills, this is part of our skills banner, I guess, but we run training courses, both open and specific under certain banners, and specific and tailored training courses. We also do some online specifically on agrochemicals with a company called KNEC 365. But we also do tailored training, and we've done webinar training for a number of clients as well. So please contact us. The details are there on this slide and on many others. And those are the way we can help in terms of talking about what we do on consultancy. Again, if you've listened to some of the other presentations, you'll know a lot about these. But we help people with simple problem solving, but we also help them to profile their assignments and what their actual issue is. but please talk to us if you've got any of those issues. So as with many other presentations, what is formulation? And it's amazing, even for us, that people don't understand what formulation is. And it's a technology, but it enables things to happen. And as I've said in many times, if you don't know how to formulate your materials, then they are absolutely useful. Useless, actually. So formulation and enabling technology is a good terminology, we think. It means you can get small quantities of an active ingredient to be applied safely and effectively by combining the active with other components. And particularly in cosmetics, that can be quite important. You can imagine you only apply a small amount to your skin. If that doesn't contain the right amount of active or the right amount of moisturizer, and it's not evenly distributed, you are not going to see the effect. And cosmetics are expensive things, so the customer is going to be very upset if you haven't got the formulation correct. It's sometimes called a composition, active ingredient plus formulations and inerts. And it shouldn't be forgotten that it's also a processing step in the lab or in the manufacturing plant. So a lot of what we call formulation, other people might call processing, but actually by processing it correctly, you do what we've spoken about earlier, and you get it applied safely and you get it applied homogeneously. And that's a big issue when you don't get the processing right. So why do you formulate? And remembering this was for a cosmetics audience, they make lots of claims, and if it's not formulated correctly, people won't see that effect and they won't buy it again. It needs to be available in the application, it needs to be there, it needs to be delivered where you want it, when you want it, and how you want it. You might formulate to a quality standard. You definitely need it to be stable. From simple things like the active ingredient needs to be there, but even something you might not regard as an active ingredient, perhaps in a color cosmetic, if the color is seen to fade and you've formulated something that's, for example, a bright red lipstick, but when people buy it in the shop it's fading, or as they use it, it starts to fade, then people aren't going to buy it again. Obviously, cost is important in many industries, and cost equals profit, obviously. Need to be able to make it so many times. I think you can formulate anything and formulate to solve any problem, but can you make it, and can you do it to the right cost basis? And obviously there are regulatory requirements that you need to formulate to, so sometimes an ingredient might disappear. For example, with the REACH, the registration, evaluation and authorization of chemicals in Europe, if an ingredient is removed from sale because it cannot meet REACH requirements, or it's too expensive, that ingredient, to meet all of those requirements, then you may need to reformulate. And in cosmetics, we pointed out at the time, there are often soft regulations. So there are often free from claims, which might not necessarily be regulated, but the consumer wants them in some form. So regulations can be strict legal ones, or can be soft, almost consumer regulations. So again, think back, we're trying to say, where is formulation done? And it's across all industries: pharmaceuticals, healthcare, home care, and cosmetics and personal care is what we were talking about at this conference. Inks, an ink in many ways is something that you apply to your hair, so that becomes a cosmetic and a personal care one. Agrochemicals is very important, where formulation, you need to deliver it to the right site and kill the right thing, the right pest, and not the crop you're trying to protect. Coatings, fuels, lubricants, food, everything you'll buy in the shop is formulated in many ways, even down to something like a sugar, where there's a process in there, and salt where you want it to flow, or maybe you want it to be low sodium. And drinks, all drinks, even alcohol. Alcohol, ethanol needs to be formulated so it's safe to drink, and it has a nice flavour occasionally, or so I'm told. So now really we're moving on to, well, what is it that formulators are trying to achieve? And this is across all industries. So there are three main goals across all industries. You need a business brief. You need to meet those claims we talked about. And in many ways, you need to meet the costs that people are talking about. We touched on manufacturing. It's no good making something that is, as we say, on a knife edge in terms of processing. So one day it'll work, the other day it won't, and you don't really know why. So you want to have a process that works first time and every time. And that means you can change the equipment, obviously knowledgeable, but you can change it and you know that you'll still be able to make it, or in many ways you can change the site. And there are many anecdotes about something that could only be made on one site, and that maybe it was a good thing, kept that site alive, where they tried to transfer the manufacturer and couldn't do that. And you need to be able to cope with sensible changes in raw materials, properties and supplies. So how often are formulators told that they need to change? We found a better supplier, or we found a cheaper supplier, more relevant, and will that make a difference? So your formulation and your manufacturing needs to be robust. And then there's the regulatory requirements we've talked about. You need the required data and knowledge. And if there is an inspection regime, then sometimes you need to make sure that if you're going to be inspected ISO or perhaps by the FDA or by any of the industry regulators, that you're not going to be closed down because you haven't actually met those regulations, both in manufacture and during the development. And of course, the worst thing that can happen is you have adverse product reactions or accidents in use. So how do I achieve all of those goals? Well, it all comes from understanding and knowledge base, and those decisions need to be informed. They should be based around data. In the UK, in the present COVID crisis, we often hear about them. We are going to be guided by the science. That really should mean it's guided by data, and that the decisions are informed by that data, and then they make decisions based on that. No different for formulations. And if you do that correctly and you're developing a new product, it will not only help with that product, but it will help with any future products. But of course, everything in these days is done against a background of time and resource pressures, and everyone will still need to improve their productivity when faced with a different environment. So they're trying to do a lot of what you might call good science, but they have to do it quickly, and they have to do it with a limited amount of resource. So we have what we call a process. We call it the formulation or the design for formulation process. But people may say, well, we've got a process. So what happens if you have something that isn't really structured? Well, it's a bit like this, what you can see on the right hand side, and a game of Jenga where it might look as though it's balanced, it is in control. Pull away the wrong block and it all falls down. So we talked about it before, you might well do everything right in the lab, but you've not considered what your manufacturing can do. And it won't process reliably, you can't meet the claim, and the costs are too high. Spoke again, you might have just developed something and it may well work. May work first time, may work time after time, but suddenly you need to move your manufacturing site. Or you need your equipment breaks down and you can't repair it, you need to go and buy another one. It's not available, that specific type of equipment, but there's something similar. Will it do the job? And you need to understand that if you don't have a process and it's too loose, you don't have that flexibility. And as we've spoken about, the starting material changes need to be taken account of. If you're developing something new, you might just buy the wrong equipment, you might build the wrong facility, you may go to the wrong sub-manufacturer, contract manufacturer. You may end up doing an awful lot more testing, you may have your R&D group doing troubleshooting and not developing new products. And if you don't get it right, you may lose all of that knowledge in that development. It might be in somebody's head, they might retire, they might leave, and you don't really know why they did this. It's just down, well, we do this. Okay, that doesn't really help you necessarily. Maybe that product is now going to disappear from the market. Why did we choose that? What was the rationale behind that? Just not known, and then you're in trouble. So if you take a structured approach, then it doesn't matter what industry you're in, the same things apply across all those industries. So before you go into the lab, we always say, just think, just stop and think about what you're going to do. Make a plan. Look at what's happened previously. You then get into the lab, and I know it's difficult. When I was formulating in the lab, I just wanted to get on and do things. And you can do that, but you do need to stop and think and look at what has worked before and what hasn't worked before. There's no point in just bottle shaking or choosing a bottle from the shelf. You may be lucky. You may get lucky one time. You may get lucky the first time. It won't happen over and over again. You need to have those informed decisions. Then when you move on to a pilot scale, that's when it really starts to get a little bit scary, and it's processing on real equipment. The example we always use is it's very, very easy to shake a bottle with only 100 grams or 100 milliliters of liquid in there. It's not so easy if you've got a large scale vessel, if you haven't got the mixing right. If it's extremely viscous and you've got something stuck on the side of your laboratory beaker, you get your spatula out and you scrape it out. What do you do on the real scale? Industrial scale gets even worse, and then of course you want to develop new products, and sometimes in many industries formulation is all about just a little tweak and you get a new product on the market with an enhanced claim or a different claim. If you've done a structured approach, you can do that extremely quickly. If you have to start from scratch again, you don't know what you've done, you're going to be in real trouble. And there's an example of a pharma company claiming that when they did it structurally, they'd cut their development time by 35%. So as I've said, we have called something the design for formulation process. It's based around something called QBD, which is quality by design, and is used a lot in the pharmaceutical industry. We like the process. It's based around common sense. I think lots of things are when you develop a process for something. But we've taken it and applied probably more common sense and less, having talked about a structured one, but less major structure and inflexibility around the process to design the formulation. So it would be applicable to all industries and not just a regulated one, and you're doing it for the right reasons, not just to satisfy a regulator. So this is the process flow that in a way I've just talked about in the previous slides, but it applies everywhere. You start somewhere, you get started, you look at what's known, what's available, you then go into the lab, you then, if you have it, will go to the pilot scale. Much scarier if you go straight from the lab into full-scale manufacture, and then it's about exploiting the knowledge and then going back to getting started. But if you follow this type of a process and adapt it to your industry, your customer base, you will actually be able to go through this loop. The first time might be painful, the second time will be really quick, or quicker, I guess. Let's not underestimate how much time developing a formulation can take, even if it's just a modification. But you will undoubtedly do it better, do it quicker, do it cheaper. So in everything you have to get used to a language, and the language we speak about a customer promise, and that is really what it says. So what, if you were the customer, what are you expecting from the supplier, and what do you as the supplier promise to deliver? And that's promise. So you start out by saying, what do they want and what are you going to deliver? And that drives everything. You then move into what's the business brief, and in that you will talk about costs. There is no doubt about that. You then will have a technical brief, and you'll have some quality attributes, which are, well, what are the really key things? And I've put the word which are critical because they are there. You can have lots of attributes, lots of material properties, lots of process parameters, but you need to focus on what are the critical ones. You cannot control everything. You need to control what is really important. So you meet the technical and business brief, and you deliver what your customer expects and you promise to deliver. And then if you've got all of that right, you need to have some process control. So no process is absolutely the same and completely under control. What you need to know is if something changes, how do you rectify that before it goes too far? So if you've done this correctly, then you can get some really good process control, and you can just be flying in many ways. So the business brief comes from that customer promise. You make the case for the project to go ahead. You get the funding, you get the resource that you believe you need, you get the commitment from all the business functions involved. That promise linked to the theme, you as a team, and this is not just an R&D process and R&D exercise. It's a whole team, which can be sales and marketing, can be engineering, can be manufacturing, and should be all of those, in fact. And your team must deliver those expectations. And a key part of the business brief for Formulators is the technical brief. So what is this infamous technical brief? Well, it can have lots of different things, and you can choose your favorites there, but you might want to talk about what are the regulations, you might want to talk about what the format is it a liquid, is it a solid, can it be a suspension? Very specifically, what's the shelf life under certain environments, what's the in-use shelf life, what are the cost targets, what's the dosing mechanism, what should it look like? What about our manufacturing constraints or requirements? So are you constrained by equipment you have at the moment? Do you have a budget that you could buy new equipment? Do you have a budget that you could go to contract manufacturers? Starting this and answering those type of questions at the beginning are really important. And where are you going to sell it? As we all know, there are lots of regulations that are specific to areas. So if your target market is Europe, then you need to focus on the European regulations. If your target market is North America, then maybe you focus on those regulations. And different ingredients will have different approvals in different regions and different markets. So you can't assume that just because it's in Europe, it's going to be approved in the US and vice versa, or Latin America or China or Asia. They're all different. And just talking about it and answering those type of questions at the beginning are really, really important. So this is a little bit about before you started, a bit of thinking. It's all about prior knowledge. So where do you get prior knowledge from? Well, it'll be from previous project. What's different in this one? What were the challenges that were previously met? And again, if you haven't had a structured process, you might not be able to answer those questions. You may want to look at what are the competitor products. A lot of projects start by saying, well, we want to be better than that. Or do you just want the same and we'll just do it cheaper? Okay, you have internal experts, and you do have to be aware here that people will say, been there, done that, didn't work. Okay, right time, right place, wrong time, wrong place. Don't ignore them, but just think about, well, have things changed? Have we got more ability to buy that material now? Sometimes raw materials on scale become available. But also don't just say we can do it. Because there is a risk with saying that. There are external experts, and I would recommend a company called iFormulate as being one of those external experts who you might want to choose to help you with, and you need to know what's in it for them. There's loads of stuff over the internet, scientific papers, general articles, internet, etc. Just be aware, not everything is true that's on the internet, fake news as they say, but in science you've got more chance of it being correct, but read things critically. And patents are excellent. The background section will give you a challenge. You may well see a way of solving yours, but of course the issue is don't infringe on those patent protections, or if you think you might be infringing, then work out how you're going to resolve that. Maybe it's via a license, etc. So just involve then a patent attorney, and that might be where, if you're in a small company, you need an external expert. Spoke about risk assessments and an outline of risk assessments. It is all about risk. Nothing's guaranteed at the beginning of a project to work. So you need to look at the risk assessment, and that obviously is as good as the knowledge and expertise and openness of mind. So you need to know what you're trying to understand. All again, what about the product? What about the claims? What are the critical attributes? What are the properties of the material that will affect the quality attributes? What about the starting materials? What process parameters are there? What about your range? You know, you can't always have it at 29 degrees centigrade. What happens if it's 29.2? So what about the range? You know, is it 28 to 30, for example? And what happens if it goes outside of there? That's your control strategy to end up where you want to be. So that's the type of thing you start to do in a risk assessment. So what does one of these risk assessments look like? Well, this is just a form we've put together. You can put together your own form, but you can see on the left-hand side in the left-hand column, it all starts from the customer promise, technical brief, and the quality standards. And then you talk about what is the detail of that attribute. We'll give you an example on the next slide. What's your target? And then critically, is it a critical quality attribute? Playing on words with critical. And then it's all about giving some history. So you can have a form and you can have a standard procedure, but what's your justification for it? Give a little bit of commentary if you can. Not overly bureaucratic, but fairly simple and straightforward. But let's just look at an example that we've taken from a pharmaceutical example. So here we have a tablet, and you can see on the left hand side we've filled in what would be a tablet and some of the product critical quality attributes. So the tablet needs to dissolve, it needs to have good shelf life, the content needs to be uniform. If you think of a tablet, what you don't want is all the active ingredient in one and no active ingredient in the other. It needs to have a good appearance. There are some other mandatory standards, and let's, for this example, we just took moisture content. And then in the next bit, where here we're trying to link the quality attributes to the starting material, we've put in what might be the typical starting materials in a tablet. So the filler, the binder, the disintegrant and the lubricant. And I'm not going to go through everything, but let's just say, what impact does the filler have on dissolution in terms of what's the risk? Is it high, medium or low? Well, in terms of the filler, if we know about tablets, we would expect the choice of filler and the raw material to have a high influence on the dissolution. If we go, for example, to the binder, and let's have a look at the critical quality attribute of appearance. Do we think the binders and the starting material of the binder is going to be critical in terms of the appearance? And we've said no, we think it's a low one. If we look at, let's take another one. So what about the disintegrants? So is the disintegrant and the quality of material, is that going to have an effect on the uniformity of content? Well, we think there's a low risk that it will have an impact on that. But in terms of the dissolution, well, that's why the disintegrant's in there. So that is a high one. And then the lubricant, which is often put into the tablet to help with the processing. And to be honest, the lubricant doesn't really have too much of an impact on many things in terms of this risk assessment, which is refined as we go on. But in terms of shelf life and uniformity of content, we don't think the lubricant is going to have a major effect, but we do think it will have an effect on the dissolution, and there's a high risk that if we get the lubricant wrong, and that's the way of looking at it, if we get the lubricant wrong, or the level or the type of lubricant, then there's a high risk that the dissolution will be impacted. And you can develop this for different parts. So that's the raw material function. Here we could do with the process steps. So what about the process parameters? How are they linked to the quality attributes in the product? And you can see on the left hand side we have the same quality attributes, but here we put in the process step parameters. So for the tablet it would be, first of all, materials are dispensed, then they're blended, then the lubricant's blended, then you do the tablet compression, then you might do the coating, and then etc, depending upon where your process is. And then for each of those process step parameters you will look at whether there's a high risk or a medium or a low risk, and you will then focus on the high risk areas and try to clarify those. But the risk assessment tends to be changed. It's not a one-off exercise. So you do a risk assessment just after you've got started, after you've done your preliminary work. You will do that preliminary risk assessment, and it'll all be based upon your prior knowledge. After you've done the lab work, you'll do another risk assessment. You will review what you said and what you thought was going to happen based upon your lab data. Then you'll move on to the pilot scale, and after you've seen what data you're getting from the pilot scale, you will then use that to once again review your risk assessment and say, was I right, was I wrong? And then in manufacturing, you'll get industrial scale data, and you shouldn't, as a developer, forget about the data you're getting from manufacturing. An awful lot of data there. And again, you can review your risk assessment, and that will help you to exploit the knowledge to understand, well, what have we really seen in manufacturing that's impacting on my critical quality attributes? So if I want to develop a similar product, maybe I don't need to focus on some of the things at the beginning that I thought were important, but I will have reviewed it. And that's extremely important. Risk assessment is not one-off. But now, as I was talking at a cosmetics conference, I needed to give a cosmetics example. So this was a made up one, but let's take a look. So this is our product concept, and you can see on the top right hand corner that's what our marketing team thought we were going to develop, and it's called Scrub-A-Dub, and it's the new body wash for really messy people. And the marketing people have put together a product presentation. They've said, had a great day getting your hands dirty and you want to just get rid of that ingrained grime that your usual soap doesn't seem to shift, then Scrub-A-Dub is the product for you. And this is the topical thing in terms of with its special natural pomegranate seed particles and combination of cleaning oils in a foamy wash, it will leave you clean and sparkling fresh. So the market driver here really is the removal of microplastics. They say we've tested it for removing oil, paint and garden dirt, and it's better than any other body wash you can buy. So get cleaned up and ready to start again with Scrub-A-Dub. And they've set a target price of £7.49 for 500 mils. So it's a premium product, I guess. So just something that we made up and we thought was topical. So how might you apply the process we've said to this product? So in terms of, based on what we were given there, what might be the critical quality attributes of the product? Well, it needs to perform. And that really means dirt removal or oil removal. It will need to conform to certain mandatory standards, such as it will need to be preserved, it will need to not be an irritant, and in cosmetics there may be a need to avoid certain preservatives or be below a certain level. It will need to have good aesthetics and appearance. So that might be clarity, that might be colour, that will definitely be fragrance, and it will definitely need to have a certain skin feel. So that's critical to the product being successful. The active ingredients, and it's interesting, what is the active ingredient? Is it the pomegranate seed? Is it the colour? Is it the surfactants? There may be multiple active ingredients, but you need to identify those and you need to determine what concentration is required to meet your customer promise. The pH in terms of sensitization may be important, and the viscosity, you need to get it out of that dispenser, so it's probably more important rheology rather than viscosity. And then stability, we talked earlier about colour, so you don't want to put that red on the shelf and have some of them fading away, and you don't want your pomegranate seeds to be settling all to the bottom. You need them to be suspended. So this in many ways is a suspension formulation. So that's the type of thing based on that brief that we would expect to be some of the product critical quality attributes, and you could go on. But in here, we've tried to look at the active ingredient summary and what might be important to each of those, and you'll see in the left-hand column each of those product critical quality attributes. Again, you can pause and look at what we've put here. Again, it's a judgment, it's a view, but the particle size in terms of performance requirements and getting rid of the dirt, well, yeah, if you don't have the right particle size of those pomegranate seeds and particles, then if you get that wrong, it probably won't remove the dirt. If we look at the solubility of the active ingredient, well, maybe it would be there, but it might have an effect on the stability. In terms of if it's soluble, it might just start to disappear. The flow properties from the active ingredient, let's just say it's that pomegranate particles, probably won't affect the flow properties very much. That'll be down to your gelling agent and down to your surfactants and dispersants. The impurities, residual solvents, adulteration, don't have much of an impact apart from maybe on the active ingredients. If you have too many impurities, then you may have some issues, and potentially mandatory standards we put low, but in hindsight maybe that's probably better to be a medium. And then the microbiology quality, again, that's where we've put it as high, because if it's contaminated in itself, then it will affect the microbiology quality in the end. But if it's contaminated in essence, it probably won't affect how easily it removes dirt. It might affect the fragrance, but it's not the critical element there. But it certainly will affect the stability, including the in-use. So it certainly wouldn't be stable if you had some contaminated raw material from the pomegranate particles. And then if we looked at the other materials, and we've called these excipients, in some ways you might call them also active ingredients, but let's just look at the surfactant will obviously be key in terms of whether it removes dirt. The oils that are in there, again, key to how well it actually works. The preservatives probably don't affect, and that's why we put low for the performance requirements, but definitely will impact on the microbiology quality. The fragrance, not necessarily for the dirt removal, but certainly will have an effect on the appearance and aesthetics, and the same applies to colour. So again, a high risk that if you get the colour wrong, if you have a poor batch of the colour, then you won't have good aesthetics. And then the water and water quality, okay, all down there, but we've put medium in terms of how it might affect, and certainly on pH and viscosity, the water quality, we've put medium, but in essence they're all low to medium. So as long as our water is okay, then it's probably there. Maybe number 2, if your water's contaminated, it might affect the microbiological quality, but you wouldn't expect that to be the case. In any sensible place, you'd probably use distilled or deionized water in this product. You wouldn't be using Thames water, for example. So that was just a brief run through that we did at the time for the people there, and in essence all of those things still apply, and there are other webinars we have on our website which will talk about this design process. One from Ian Jolliffe and one that I ran together with David Hudd about process quality. So please feel free to listen to those. In summary though, formulation design is key in every industry, so I hope there are people outside of cosmetics maybe listening to this, because it is important. It will improve productivity, it will improve quality, and it will increase your profits. Risk assessment, and we rattled through it. This can be the subject, the whole design for formulation of a 2-day training course, but we can guide people through it. But it's important you don't see any of these as a one-off exercise. It's all about reviewing, all about iteration. And to us, formulation design is a key element for new product development. So that was it. That was what we said in 2017. Would we say anything different now? No. If you are interested in learning more and how we might be able to help you to apply this to your process now, then contact details there are on the screen for myself and for Jim. And I hope you've enjoyed this iFormulate Revisited presentation, and look forward to welcoming you to another one. And stay safe, everyone. Bye-bye.